Hey, gentlemen, welcome back to another episode with the Soul Sartorialist. Really wanted to have a conversation because something that I've learned as I've gotten older, and I've talked to a lot of young men, specifically the newer generation. I'm in my mid 30s, and I'm speaking about the generation my age and younger when it comes to making new friends, especially when you move to a new city, as you transition from different parts of your career, from college to adult life. And it can be very difficult to make new friends, specifically if you're a high performing man, you're very busy, and you don't have the energy to necessarily want to make new friends. And so I've come up with an idea, and I wanted to share it with you guys so you could try as an experiment. And I would love to get your comments once you've tried this experiment. So this is a challenge to all the men who listen to this podcast. And I'm going to call it the Barnes and Noble method, specifically when it comes to guys who are more introverted, who are not necessarily a big fan of making new friends, or you find it difficult to make new friends. And so I have a quick monologue I wanted to go over with you guys, specifically talking about the Barnes and Noble method and how I came up with it and how it could be useful to you as you continue to try to make new friends and get out of that shy spirit. And hopefully you'll find value in it. So let me tell you something real. A lot of people want better social skills, the way people want a six pack. They want it, but they don't want the process. They want confidence, connection, charisma, good conversations, the ability to walk into a room and not feel like they're invisible. But they don't want that awkward moment where your voice cracks a little bit. They don't want that moment where you're overthinking what to say. They don't want that moment when you're trying to be normal, but your brain is screaming, don't be weird. And that's something I struggle with my new neighbors. Just meeting them in the elevator or walking in the hallway. They say something and you try to figure out something that doesn't sound weird to say to them. It can be like trying to figure out your words. It can be difficult, even with a person who has a lot of interpersonal skills like myself. And I really do get it. I really do. Because interpersonal skills are one of the most valuable skills you can develop. And it's one of the most intimidating skills to practice. But today I'm going to give you a method that works. And it's simple, it's low pressure, and it's a real life training ground for your confidence. And I call it the Barnes and Noble method. Now, let me explain what I mean. Barnes and Noble is not just a bookstore. Barnes and Noble is a social gym. It's a place where people show up already interested in something. They're not defensive like they are at the bar. They're not rushing like they are at the grocery store. They're not emotionally armored like they are in a club. They are there for knowledge, for curiosity, for a quiet moment. And because of that, Barnes and Nobles is one of the easiest places in the world to practice being social without forcing it. Because the secret to being good with people isn't some magical pickup line. It's not about being loud. It's not about being impressive. The secret is learning how to start small conversations naturally without needing the conversation to go somewhere. So I'm going to pause here, gentlemen. When you have a conversation with someone, don't worry about where the conversation is going. Just have a conversation. And we're going to go through what that conversation looks like, what that interaction looks like, so that you can continue to work on your interpersonal skills and you can take the Barnes and Noble method challenge. This is where a lot of people mess up. They think every conversation needs to lead to a friendship or a date or a business connection or a number or some big outcome. No. Sometimes the goal is just to practice contact. Practice eye contact. Practice smiling. Practice asking a question. Practice listening without panicking. That's it. So here's how it works. Step 1, choose a section you actually like. For me personally, I love medieval history. I love cars, mafia history, and medieval warfare. Those are some of the things that I'm into. So that's the section that if you saw me at Barnes and Noble, you'll find me in. So this isn't a mission to go pretend you're somebody that you're not. If you like sports biographies, go there. If you like American history, go there. If you like medieval history like myself, go there. If you like business, go there. If you like self-development, go there. Because if you walk into a section you don't care about, you're going to feel like an imposter. But when you go to a section you genuinely enjoy, now your body relaxes. Now your mind opens up. And when you're comfortable, you're naturally more social. And listen, guys, the people in that section, they are your people. Maybe not in age, maybe not in background, but in shared interest. And gentlemen, an interest is a bridge. Here's step 2, gentlemen. The first goal is not talking. The first goal is to be present. A lot of people struggle socially. They're always in their head. They walk around like they're being hunted. They're scanning the room thinking, do I look awkward? Do people notice me? What if I say something dumb? What if they don't respond? And gentlemen, the truth is, you are not awkward because you're awkward. You're awkward because you're self-focused. So the Barnes & Noble method forces you to do something different. You start to focus on the world outside of you. You start reading the titles. You start pulling books. You start looking at the covers. You start getting comfortable with existing in public without trying to disappear. And that alone is a skill by itself. Step 3, make a small, normal comment. And I emphasize, gentlemen, normal comment. This is very important. I'm going to say this clearly. Do not be weird. Don't come in there acting like a movie character. Don't walk up too close. Don't interrupt somebody who's clearly wants to be left alone. Respect the space. But when it feels natural, you can start with something just like this, something very simple. That's really a solid book. You can say that. I've heard good things about that author. You can say that. That's a great section. I always get stuck over here. You could say that. What got you into this topic? You could say that. Have you read anything else like that? You could say that. These are questions you can ask that allow the person to have to be open to conversation. That's it. In this situation, you're not trying to win. You're just opening the door for conversation. And here's what people don't realize. Most human beings are starving for safe interaction. Most people are not going to get mad that you said, hey, that's a pretty cool book. Now, if you walk up and say, excuse me, your aura is interesting. Tell me your deepest childhood trauma. Yeah, that's weird. But if you say something normal, most people respond. And if they don't, that's okay. Because you are practicing, gentlemen. You're building reps. Now, let me tell you why this works. This works because Barnes & Noble removes the pressure. At a party, people are trying to perform. They're trying to be too cool, right? At a bar, people are trying to prove something. They're trying to be the tough guy or the cool guy, right? At work, people are wearing masks. They're not being their true selves, right? On social media, everyone is a brand. But in a bookstore, people are just people. And books give you an automatic conversation starter. A book is basically a sign that says, here's what my brain is into. You don't have to guess what to talk about. It's literally right there in your hands. And I personally learned this firsthand. I'll give you an experience. I was in the American history section because I love American history, specifically when we talk about the Civil War. And really, I could stand there for hours. The powers of talking about like the presidents, the wars, the economics, strategy, culture, civil rights, etc. And one day at Barnes & Noble, I made friends with an older gentleman. He was about 74 years old. He was a graduate of the University of Virginia. He played basketball. He was originally from upstate New York. And me and him come from two different cultural backgrounds, right? I'm an African-American. He's an older Caucasian male. We sat down at the place to eat. We had some food because a lot of the bigger Barnes & Nobles are going to have a Starbucks. So we sat down. I had my books and we just chatted for about an hour. got his number, got his information, and we just talked about the growth of this country over the last decade and all the social, from a society perspective, how things have changed so much. And we became good friends. He had so many stories about his individual experiences, and he was a retired bank executive who had worked in the banking industry for quite some time. So it was a great opportunity for me. And this is what I mean when I say this is a Barnes and Noble method moment. So when it comes to that, don't do what a lot of shy people do. I didn't interrupt them. I didn't rush them. I didn't try to prove how smart I was. I didn't try to turn it into an argument. I just listened. And he started telling me about what he loved. So it was great. It's a great conversation, and I really enjoyed myself. And that's how it was. We weren't strangers anymore. We were two people who had shared a moment at Barnes and Noble. And that's what social skills are. Not being the life of the party. Social skills are the ability to make somebody feel safe, seen, and respected in a short moment. Now, gentlemen, I want you to listen closely. Here's the deeper lesson. Most people want confidence, but confidence comes from proof. Confidence is not something you think your way into. Confidence is something you earn, and you earn it through experiences like this. One conversation at a time, one small interaction at a time. So when you're shy and when you're anxious and when you feel awkward, you don't fix it by hiding. You fix it by putting yourself in an environment when it's safe to practice, or where it's safe to practice. And Barnes and Noble is safe because you can talk for 20 seconds and walk away. You can talk for 2 minutes and walk away. And if it's flowing, you can do just like me and talk for an hour. There's no pressure. And here's the best part, gentlemen. This method doesn't just build social skills, it builds maturity, because you can talk to people outside your age group. You learn how to relate. When you talk to people outside of your race, you learn how to relate. When you talk to people outside of your lifestyle, you learn how to relate. And that's the real interpersonal intelligence. Not just talking to people exactly like yourself, but being able to connect with anyone respectfully. So if you struggle socially, here's the challenge. And I want to hear it in the comments, gentlemen. Go to Barnes & Noble, pick a section you actually enjoy, walk slowly, breathe, relax your shoulders. Don't be weird. If you see someone holding a book that genuinely interests you, say one simple sentence. Hey, that's a great book. What got you into that subject? And then listen. Don't try to impress them. Just be present. I promise you this, gentlemen. The less fear you'll have, the least awkwardness you'll feel, the less your brain will treat people like a threat. And slowly, you'll become the kind of man who can walk into any room and connect. Not because you're fake, not because you're loud, but because you've trained yourself to be socially calm, grounded, and curious. That's the Barnes and Noble method. Once you master it, you'll realize something. Interpersonal skill is not a talent. It's a muscle. And like every muscle, it grows through reps, one conversation at a time. So again, that's my challenge to you, gentlemen. Try out the Barnes and Noble method. If you have any further conversation, you need help or assistance, I do have an ability to book a consultation with me. It has a direct link to my Calendly at the White and Simmons Advisor Group, LLC. We help men with their interpersonal skills, whether that's through just social settings, dating, etc., but just helping people develop those skills because it's a very important skill, specifically in the world post-COVID. So I hope you guys enjoyed this monologue. I hope that it adds some value to your life. And I truly hope that you guys continue to work on your interpersonal skills and become the very best version of the man that you seek to be. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.